Every chip in every device you own descends from a part that almost nobody wanted. When it was invented, it did less than the thing it replaced, and it cost far more. Guess how much one of them cost when they went on sale? About $120 in 1961 money for one chip. You could buy the same function out of loose parts for a fraction of that. So the sensible thing for any company to do was wait. And almost every company did exactly that. One buyer cared far more about failure than about price, and that single fact changed everything. The problem was a missile that had to sit in a hole in the ground for years, then, on a few seconds of notice, work perfectly the first time. Guess what the enemy of that is? Weight and solder joints. Every connection is somewhere a thing can fail. A guidance computer built from loose parts had tens of thousands of connections. Each chip swallowed a dozen of those connections into one sealed package, and a computer used thousands of chips. For a normal buyer, that was an expensive way to save a little space. For this buyer, it was the difference between a weapon that works and one that does not. The military started buying, and it bought in a way that mattered far more than the money. It did not buy 100 chips, it committed to buying them for years. Guess what that does to a factory? It turns an experiment into a production line, and a production line gets cheaper. Every doubling of the number made brought the price per chip down. Within a few years, the price had fallen by more than 90%, and at that price, the companies that had sensibly waited suddenly wanted them. The military had not meant to create a consumer industry, it just needed reliable missiles. What it actually paid for was the ride down the cost curve. To make the price fall, the hard part was not design, it was dust. A chip is built in layers, and the features are smaller than anything you can see. A single speck of dust landing in the wrong place ruins the whole thing. Guess what fraction of early chips came out working? Often well under half, sometimes far worse than that. So the industry ended up building rooms cleaner than any operating theater. Filtered air moving in one direction, people sealed in suits because people shed dust. And the real product of that room is not the chip, it is the yield. Making the thing was never the problem. Making it the same way 10,000 times was. One small area of California ended up holding almost the whole industry, and the reason is petty. A university had spent 20 years pulling electronics firms onto its doorstep. One transistor laboratory landed on top of that. Then the people who worked at it fell out with the founder and left together. Guess what they did next? Started a company down the road. Then some of them left that one and did it again. And again, company after company, all within driving distance of each other. Every generation of it carried the knowledge of the last one out of the door in people's heads. That is the thing that could not be copied by another country, and still cannot. It was never the buildings, it was that everyone who mattered could have lunch together. One step in this is almost never mentioned outside the industry, and it decides what is possible. Somebody has to build the machines that build the chips. Guess how many companies in the world can make the most advanced one? One. There is exactly one, and it is not American. That machine is the single most complicated object in commercial production anywhere. It costs more than an airliner, and there is a waiting list for it, which means the whole industry has a bottleneck, one factory wide. Everybody talks about who designs chips. Almost nobody talks about who can print them. And the second question is the one that decides what is actually possible. The same pattern happened again in the same decade with something else entirely. A government agency paid to connect a handful of university computers together. Not mainly to invent anything, to stop wasting money buying every campus its own machine. Guess what people ended up using it for most? Sending each other messages. Within 4 years, that was most of the traffic on it, and nobody had budgeted for it. The useful part of the invention was not the part anyone was trying to build.
It happened because somebody paid for the boring infrastructure and then let go of it. That is the actual American formula, and it is much less heroic than the story people tell. A single pattern sits underneath all of it, and it is not really about electronics at all. New technology is almost never beaten on price at the start. It is beaten on everything. It is worse, it is dearer, and the sensible buyer is right to wait. Guess what usually breaks that deadlock? One customer with a problem so expensive that the price stops being the point. Not the biggest customer, the one whose failure costs the most. That customer pays for the first 10,000 units and the price falls. And then everybody who waited gets it cheap and calls it obvious. Getting rich took more than inventing it. They were the ones who found the buyer who could not afford to say no. Look at anything expensive and new today and ask the same question. Not who is going to want this eventually. Everybody, eventually. Ask who has a problem right now that is more expensive than the price. Guess how often that turns out to be a government, a hospital, or a factory. Nearly always, because those are the places where failure has a number attached. The consumer version arrives later, and it arrives cheap, and it looks inevitable. It was never inevitable. Somebody paid full price so that you would not have to. That is the part of every technology story that gets left out, and it is the whole engine.